Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Trig Podcast of Joy, to this awesome stream on this evening. Where's my ghost bell? Right here. There it is. Welcome back to my channel. Talking about a very cheery topic today. Cheery topic. But, some of these things we have to talk about. The puzzle of ending your life. I don't want to even say the word because of maybe the online thing will stop this stream. But, yes, we're talking about the the end of life and the puzzle of it. Why do 40% of those who do end their lives are men? I think it's 40%. No, it must be 60%. And so why do so many men especially either have ideations of ending their lives or actually have gone through it? Perhaps you know someone that has ended their lives in this way, and they maybe were even people of faith. Men could be women who have had faith but struggled in that area, or maybe you are a man or your husband or your son perhaps who has expressed to you these kind of concerns. Men and women, of course. We know, even I think it was Miss USA 2013 or 19 who ended her life. I think it was last year about this time. She jumped off the top of her building in New York City. And so we know that this is a reality, especially post-pandemic. You have a lot of stress and a ton of mental health concerns, and a lot of it is hidden. It's underneath the surface, and people of faith especially probably don't have a place to talk to, and men especially, not being exactly the most therapeutic types, they can suffer in silence, and you have this kind of living lives of quiet desperation. Yes, Frank's, I forget his last name, Volcker, his famous book talks about. And so you have all of these major concerns and major issues, and I don't think the Bible really talks about it. I think, if anything, sometimes in the church or in the Christian world, we often condemn this, and we often get into the space of, is it the unforgivable sin? And so you have kind of more of a dread of even talking about these things in church, because who would want their husband, who maybe went through this tragedy, or their families for that matter, to think that God maybe is punishing them? So you have a lot of different problems that surface as a result of this very difficult topic. But I think it's important, and that's why I'm here as part of Gospel TV and the Trig Podcast of Joy, is to discuss these topics and to give you guidance from a evolutionary psychological point of view, a biblical point of view. And from a personal point of view, I haven't dealt with these struggles, but I definitely have dealt with depression and anxiety. And I remember even, I don't know, earlier this year, getting really dark and feeling like something had changed in my mind, maybe for a week or so. And that was very, very different, very concerning. And I worked very hard to just get through some of those thoughts. And so I can tell you even what I've done and been through, but obviously we have to talk about the greater picture of these problems in the church, outside the church. Your father, your mother, someone that you know, perhaps this has been a part of your history, and you know someone who has struggled, and maybe you now are someone who is concerned about these topics or about these realities, and you don't know how to even process what maybe your father, your mom has been through. For me, I would say that one of the earliest memories that I have of ending life, it was actually a hero of mine. He was a boxer back in my home country, Nicaragua. And I think maybe 20 years ago, I heard that he had been killed. And often that's part of the problem. You don't even know kind of the truth about some of these cases, right? You don't even know what really happened. People obviously would rather hide some of these things. But I was reading, and maybe I can show you here on Twitter, I was reading about the daughter of this hero of mine. His name, the man who ended his life, was Alexis Arguello from my native Nicaragua. And he was a political man. He was a professional boxer, I think 4-time world champion. But then at the end of his life, I think he was actually into politics, as I said, and he then became, I think, the mayor of the capital of Nicaragua, of Managua. And then for many reasons, some people think that he took a gun to his head and he left a note. And so his daughter is on here. And so I want to read some of the things that she often writes about, talking about kind of how people don't even like or pretend that he was killed or someone came in and wanted to rob him because I think he was a man of means. As I said, he was a professional boxer. But and so you have, I'm just looking up here some of the stuff here. So you have some of these issues that linger for a lot of people. And let's see here. So this is the man we're talking about here. This young man who ended his life. And so it says here on August 25th, so just like today's the 28th, 49 years ago, he won the first knockout of Mexican Nacho Lomeli in the stadium Roberto Clemente in Masaya, Nicaragua. So this is the boxer who 49 years ago, so he was probably in his 70s when he passed away. And so here's some of the things that Twitter has about this amazing champion from Nicaragua. There he is right there fighting against Kevin Rooney. And so you have a little bit of kind of his history there. He is fighting against Jose Fernandez at Madison Square Garden. So he was a beloved man. They call him El Flaco because he was thin and tall. And so here she's fighting against Cornelius Boza Edwards in Atlantic City. This is all in the 70s when he won. So then he became, you see there, a kind of a man who did commercials, etc. And so what I want to look up here, and I can't seem to find it, is what his daughter talks about and what people say about his life, and that he didn't get mugged or shot by anyone, but he took his own life. And then, as I said, why do these things happen? This is a quote of his: "I do think the heart can balance out the mind. If your heart is in a good place, it can give you the strength to do the right thing and behave the right way and overcome the mind." What I'm looking for is his daughter's Twitter account, because she has been talking about him lately. And so I forget her name, though. I thought it was something with a C. Let's see. Maybe I'll just look it up as Arguello daughter. Maybe that would be the best way here. Alexis Arguello daughter. Alexis Arguello daughter. David Perry. No. Ernesto. Maybe I have it in my own mentions. Let me see if I have it in my own account here. How do I even get to it? I haven't been on Twitter in 30 years. Let's see. How do I get to my own account here? Home profile, I guess. Let's see here. There it is. Boom, 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 boom. I wonder if I retweeted something about him. Conan, Kyle, blah, 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 blah. There it is. Dora. Yes. Okay. So there it is. So Dora Arguello, that's his daughter right there. And see, you can see her banner. It says, "Political assassination perpetuated July 1st, 2009. So that's when it happened. So we're talking about 13 years ago, under the dictatorship of Ortega. And so there it's saying that he was assassinated politically. I think she's talking more about his actual political, kind of what happened to him politically. But see, here it is. This is a pinned tweet from May of this year. It says, "Dr. Zacharias Duarte, MIL, IML, It says, you more than anyone knows the weight of your conscience when it comes to the assassination of my father, Alex Arguello. Ask God for forgiveness if you're not ready to say the truth and hide and deny the what happened to his face, that he was beat up, and show that he was beat up. Actually, you lied. And so that's where people are saying that he was mugged, and truly everyone believes that he took his own life, or the opposite. I think maybe I'm mistaking a little bit of the argument. Maybe the government is saying, yeah, that's probably what she means. The government was saying that he took his own life, where in reality he was mugged, is what she believes, his own daughter. But the problem with all this stuff is that, I guess my point is that, and I want to show you there's some statistics that I have regarding end of life stuff. The problem with a lot of these topics is that you don't have a lot of guidance in terms of why do people end their lives. And so I want to read to you from this amazing book that I've been reading, that I will actually use over the next few days to talk about other topics, called Evolutionary Psychology by Dr. David Buss, which is just an amazing book. It's called The New Science of the Mind. And so it talks a lot about things from men and women's, and how men and women's psychology and sexuality, suicide, fears, phobias, a lot of things that I think are very important to talk about. So yeah, here's Elsie. Let's see, just read some of the comments. So let's see, there's a high-pitched noise in the background. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Elsie. I wonder what that is. Yes, thank you for letting me know. So let me check here the stream. Thank you, Elsie. Let me see what's going on here. It could very well be the phone or something here. Let me just check it out really quick so I can hear it. I think I know what it is. And so let me just thank you so much, Elsie, for letting me know. So let me see here. Where are we on the stream? I don't have my headphones on, so that's part of the problem. Let's see here. Oh, yes, right. Yeah, that high-pitched sound. Yes, okay, let me just move a few things around. Yeah, I know what that is. Let me see here if this helps here. Yes, let me see here. Yeah, that high-pitched sound is so annoying. Yeah, I've had that happen before. Okay, let me know if it gets better, Elsie. See if that is any better. It's still there, but it might be. Let's see here. Just moving some things around here. Sometimes these cables and blah 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 and blah blah blah. Sometimes just moving things around. It's all about these cables. You know, they have this impedance and all that stuff, and so that's why you have that sound. Yeah, it's still there. I wonder why it's happening today. Oh, you know what it is? It's the lights. That's what it is. Yes. So let me see if I can do something about the light. That's what it is. Sometimes the light, when it's on, as I have it, sometimes that causes that buzz. So we may have to live with it. So let me just see if I can move it around. Okay, so hang on for a second. Talk amongst yourselves or enjoy Hawaii. Almost killed the microphone there. Yeah, it's still there, huh? Yeah, I definitely can hear it still. Okay. Well, we will, have to just go with that. I will see what I can do here. Let me see, actually, if I can do something. I'm just switching some things around, see if that's any better. 1 2 1 2. You're probably hearing some crackles. It's still there, huh? Yeah, definitely. That's even louder, huh? Let me move it to that, see if that's any better. Yeah, I still hear it for sure. Hey, that did it. Hey, good. Okay. That's way better, huh? Okay, great. Excellent. Okay. Okay, that seems to have worked. Thank you for letting me know, and now I have a solution for that problem. So great. Okay, so back to, I have a PDF here, just something from this book that I've been reading about this very topic of ending your life. And as I said, trying to get some guidance that is kind of helping us understand this problem, whether it's, as I said, something that you've been through, or you're concerned, or you just want to help people. So here it is. This is from a book called, as I said, Evolutionary Psychology, the New Science of the Mind. And so evolutionary well, actually, let me read the intro to this that I don't think you have up there in this particular page, but I have it here. It's just, I think, one little paragraph. So it says here, the census of organisms eventually resulting in death may be inevitable. So there's something already to kind of even understand. When it comes to organisms, this might be something that is inevitable, is how he starts. He's a doctor in psychology and all these amazing things. Amazing book. Evolutionary Psychology. And so he says, but there is an even deeper puzzle of evolutionary psychology. Why would anyone intentionally take his or her own life? Why would anyone? Isn't that the right question, right? Why would anyone? I mean, that is, I think, what, first and foremost, like, why? Once you find out that that's what happened, or once you know that that is what happened from someone that you love, etc., a friend, you're like, why? They were so happy, or they had everything, right? So that's the right question, is why would this happen? Why would anyone? So here it is. So evolutionary psychologist Dennis DeCantasaro, 1991, 1995, now you see it on the screen there, has developed an evolutionary theory of ending your life. And again, I'm not saying the word, not because I don't want to say it, it's just because of the stream. It might be taken down because you have to be very sensitive to language these days. Oops, let's see what's going on here. I don't know who's out there. Okay, so it says here, his central argument is that ending your life will be most likely to occur when an individual has a dramatically reduced ability to contribute to his or her own inclusive fitness. I think that's very important to answer these questions, because otherwise what can happen is you blame yourself. You think, what didn't I do? Should I have done more? Could I have prevented this? I know when even my friend recently passed away, I immediately thought of all the things I should have done differently. And this wasn't the case with him, this topic, but just my point is that is the first human reaction, is what could I have done? And so we want to get rid of that guilt and that shame, and to help people through some of these very, very challenging and just very difficult situations. So his central argument is that ending your life will be most likely to occur when an individual has a dramatically reduced ability to contribute to his or her own inclusive fitness. Indicators of this dramatically reduced capacity include expectations of poor future health, chronic infirmity, meaning illness, disgrace or failure. It's very important, right? I mean, I think it was Epstein and some of these guys, right, that have taken their lives because they were in jail because of sexual misconduct or things with minors. Again, I want to be careful with my language here on YouTube and all these platforms. But, I mean, that's what this is about, disgrace, right? When you feel this sense of disgrace, you've been disgraced, then there is another, like he's saying here, these are all kind of elements or things that contribute to this problem, indicators, as he calls them. Disgrace, poor prospects for successful heterosexual mating. Very important. Men or women, when they feel like their prospects are done or over, that they have no prospects of mating and having a family. and perceptions of being a burden on one's genetic kin. See, very important. Now we're talking about, as I said, evolutionary psychology, when now this man or this woman feels like for them to live is only going to be a burden on people like him or her. Meaning, why do I want to continue my DNA if this is what I do? This is who I am. If I'm an alcoholic, if I'm some of these other things, sexual misconduct or problems, why would I want to continue to, quote, spread my seed and my DNA if this is what I end up doing? And so this is a very, very important and very thing, like I said, very important thing to discuss, because these are the things based on statistics and studies that we're noticing. And so he says perceptions of being a burden on one's genetic kin. I don't know what that says there. These conditions, it is at least plausible that the replication of an individual's genetic, let me read from my book here because the copy there is not very good, as you can see. So let me just read from the book. I don't want to miss any word here. These are all important things. So let's see here. The next chapter, by the way, what I'm going to talk about next is really, really awesome. And I think a topic that will have maybe 3 million people. And it's challenges of sex and mating for both men and women. Very, very important. This particular topic or chapter's taught, it says it's called combating the hostile forces of nature. How about that, huh? Including ending your life. Hostile, combating, meaning fighting against the hostile forces of nature. So let's see here, page 100. So tell your friends, share this broadcast, like it, comment. It helps the algorithm to get this out to more people. We can educate people on these very important topics. So make sure that you share, like, comment, get this out to more people so that we can get, let's go for 25 likes on all the platforms. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so it says here, indicators of this dramatically reduced capacity include expectations of poor health. Okay, blah, 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 genetic kin. Under these conditions, it is at least plausible that the replication of an individual's genes would have a better chance without him or her around. See, so that's what the mind goes to. In other words, the mind, from what I'm reading here, will say that, it is better that I'm not here on this earth so that I'm not continuing to replicate my genetic makeup, my genetic information. And so now these are not things that the man or the woman is thinking about like that day, but these are these factors, indicators, what a man or a woman biologically, again, we're talking psychology, biology, we're talking about human nature. These are the things that person, that man may be thinking about, maybe more subtly or not as, maybe they're not as aware of what they're actually thinking about. It's more maybe subtle or perhaps, like he says here, more of an indicator, not something that they're consciously thinking. It's more subconscious. So under these conditions, it is at least plausible that the replication of an individual's genes would have a better chance without him or her around. If a person is a burden to his or her family, for example, then the kin's reproduction, kin meaning the family name, the DNA, the family traits, and hence a person's own fitness might suffer as a result of his or her survival. So that person's thinking, if I survive, I'm going to suffer. And therefore my whole kin, my whole name, my whole family, again, I'm not saying these are things that are true. This is just the indicators, the subtle and the subconscious, or maybe even conscious indicators, mindset, where that person's brain or head is at before this tragic event. So let's keep on reading. It says, to test this evolutionary theory of ending of life, De Catanzaro, this is the doctor, looked at suicidal ideation. So now we're talking about the thinking, kind of not even the planning perhaps, but just the thoughts, the ideation. And I've definitely had family members that have had ideation because I've helped them through some of these things. I'm not an expert in this topic as far as therapy, but I, through my pastoral and my life coaching skills, mental health especially, where I am certified, I have helped with just a little bit of this topic. And so I know that there are family members that I have that I've talked to personally about some of this ideation and help them through. and they're at a better place now. So thank you, Lord, for that. So, but I think, as always, if this is something, you need to find a therapist, you need to call a hotline, you need to get professional help with these things. And I think that these resources are helping all of us, the average person like you and me, to have at least some awareness of what may be going on, so that we can at least be more aware and conscious of the factors, indicators that people deal with. Because, as I said, because of the pandemic and the economic distress and gas prices, or you may have a husband or a son or a friend or a brother, or maybe you went through this with your father, etc. We are worried and concerned. And so this is all very helpful. So it says here, let's see, whether a person had ever considered ending their lives, had recently considered. Okay, so let me go back. So this doctor looked at ideation, which means, and these are the 4 or 5 things that it means, whether a person had ever considered it, had recently considered it, so had ever considered it, had recently considered ending their lives, intended to end their lives or herself within 1 year. How about that? Intended to end their lives or herself ever, or had previously engaged in ending their life behavior. Okay. So maybe risk taking, or just kind of being too, not being very careful with their lives, or maybe taking too many risks, too reckless. The dependent measure was a sum of responses to these items. The dependent measure was a sum of responses to these items. Ending your life ideation is not an actual event. What are we going to call this? Instead of, let's see, coming up with a better word than something with an S. It's not an actual summer. Let's go with summer. Maybe put it as a cheery term, right? But we know what we're talking about. Just starts with an S. Let's call it summer. So summer ideation is not an actual summer. Of course, that does lighten the mood a little bit, huh? Many people have thoughts of summer without actually ending their lives. Nonetheless, because summer is usually a premeditated event, a lot of summer ideation will almost invariably precede an actual summer. So once again, a lot of summer ideation will almost invariably precede, meaning it'll happen before an actual summer. So summer ideation is a reasonable index to examine as a proxy, meaning next to, for actual summer. In another part of the questionnaire, Dicantazzaro asked participants a series of questions about their perceived burdensome. Now, this is so crucial. Let me actually move some of the stuff that you see on the screen so that maybe you can read it a little bit better. There you go. There, it's a little bit better. Okay, so once again, it says here, in another part of the questionnaire, Dicantazzaro asked participants a series of questions about their perceived burdensomeness to family, perceived significance of contributions to family and society, frequency of sexual activity, very important factors we're talking about. This is the nitty-gritty, right? This is the thing, huh? Success, Daisy is like, hey, Amazon guys here. Success with members. I may have to wait till she says hello to the squirrels, I guess. Success with members of the opposite sex, homosexuality, numbers of friends, treatment by others. Now, let me go back to the homosexuality part. That's not saying that there was shame, perhaps, but I assume it's because of the response, or maybe it was shame. Maybe the person feels shame, or maybe it's because I think what we've heard most of the time, and I can't validate or not validate what I hear, what we all hear in the news, is that people are bullied. I'm not saying they're not. My point is, does that lead to summer? Well, I think we would all agree that it probably does. But I'm not sure what my point is, what he means by that here. Does he mean that homosexuality is shameful, or is that the person himself or herself, because they struggle, they then want to commit summer? Or is it because of people's response and bullying? So I'm not sure about that. Perhaps it's both. And so let's see, treatment by others, financial welfare, and physical health. Participants responded to each item using a 7-point scale ranging from -3 to +3. The participants varied: a large public sample, a sample of the elderly, a sample from a mental hospital, a sample of inmates at a maximum security center housing, those who had committed antisocial crimes, and 2 samples of homosexuals. Wow. That's a really good sample size, huh? Very good. Now, the results supported De Cantazaro's evolutionary theory of summer. When the measure of summer ideation was correlated with the other items on the questionnaire, he found the following results. Let's see here. Let me go and move this up a little bit so you can see a little bit of what, especially the numbers, right? We all like numbers. Okay, there it is. So the results, blah, blah, okay. So he found for men in the public sample ages 18 to 30, the following correlations were found with summer ideation. Burden to family plus 0.56. Sex in the last month minus 0.67. So I assume that means that half of the men plus 0.56, that half of these, I think it's men, right, said yes, it's a factor. Sex in the last month minus 0.67. I assume, maybe he'll explain it, that means that wasn't a high factor. Success in heterosexual relations minus 67, minus 0.67. Sex ever minus 0.45. Stability of heterosexual relations minus or negative 0.45. Sex in the last year negative 0.4. And number of children negative 0.3. For young women, so now we're talking about young women in the public sample, similar results were found, although they were not quite as strong. Burden to family plus 0.4. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what that means. That the highest factors for men was a burden to family. Same thing for women, just not as high, 0.44. The least factor, or the lowest factor for men was, let's see, the number of children. But let's say the top 3 factors, even though there's a big gap there, for men, it seems to be burden to family, sex in the last month. How about that? The second highest factor, even though there's a big gap there, is sex in the last month for men. So we're talking about a huge problem, a huge burden, a huge, depression, right? When a man cannot mate and a man cannot have that sexual intimacy with another human being, a woman in this case, and married, single, right? And so it'd be interesting to know how many of these men are single versus married. And as we know, a lot of times men, especially as they age, they have less and less opportunity to mate and to actually have sexual relations with as they age, meaning as they age and are single. And I would say even young men. I think I read a statistic that 1 in 3 men haven't had sexual relationships in the last year. And so you may think, oh, that's funny or that's sad, but talking about these very important topics, you see how sexual, I think, what did he call it earlier? I don't know if it's just sexual health, or I don't know what he called it, how important that is for a man. Now, we'll see it for a woman here in a second. But for a man, it's the second highest reason for summer ideation. Sex in the last month. So we're talking about the frequency, not the frequency, but how close it's been. If it's been a year, not even that, just in the last month. In other words, knowing, I guess, as a man, and if you're married or you know men, you know you have a brother, you have sons, and et cetera, you know that for men, this is more than just, he's always fantasizing. No, this is a basic human evolutionary need that men have. And so when that's not available, even within the last month, it goes way up there as a factor, as an indicator for summer ideation. And then the third one is, let's see, success in heterosexual relations, sex ever. So really, you would say that the first, except for burden to family, the 3 out of the top 4 are related to sexual relationships and access and possibility within the last month. Success in heterosexual relations, sex ever. So we're talking about very important factors. Now, for a woman, young women, it says they were very similar. It's just not as high. Top one was burden to family, sex ever. So we know that women tend to see sex in a different light, more as a result of safety and security and commitment. It's not a biological need to procreate or to spread or to have many women or to have many children, or to even biologically to feel at peace and to release the tension. But it is more of a factor of, as I said, of of intimacy, relationship, safety, stability, financial security. Because if you have relationships with a man, you know that this child, which is obviously very possible, is going to need diapers and food and shelter. And so you need to secure a man that can provide some of these things for you as a woman. And so these are things that are very important to a woman. So burden to family, sex ever, and contribution to family. For older samples, health burdens took on increased importance and showed a strong correlation with summer ideation. Yes, of course, right? So kind of the assisted summer, right? That we've all heard about. Dr. Kevorkian, what was his name? Dr. Kevorkian. Remember back in like 20 years ago? This doctor who was assisting elderly couples in ending their lives, and the big ordeal and outcry about that. And but as we see here, it says that health burdens for elderly people took on increased importance and showed a strong correlation with summer ideation. For the public sample of men over the age of 50, for example, the following significant correlations were found with summer ideation. Number one is health. So when a man's health over 50 begins to deteriorate, that's number one for him. It says here, future financial problems. So when a man can't see financial relief or help as he ages, very important. Number three, burden to family, homosexuality. Again, I'm not sure what that means. If that means that if a man knows that he's a homosexual, does that towards the end of life depress him to the point of summer ideation? For what reasons, I'm not sure. And number of friends. Now, as a follower of Jesus, of course, and as someone who we know what the Bible teaches as far as happiness in a man's role, could it mean that a man who struggles with homosexuality innately, without the bullying and without the society's maybe response to him, does that cause him to not want to live? Because I'm not sure why. Shame? Is it because of other factors? I'm not sure. But I wonder the correlation there between what God wants for men, and we know that God's laws are not there to destroy us, but only are there for our benefits. And so I wonder if that's a factor. My point is, are homosexual men more likely to consider summer ideation because of their sexuality? Or is it, like I said, a factor of bullying and how society treats them? It'd be interesting to know. And number of friends. How about that? Women over the age of 50, so now women in the public sample showed similar results. Number one is loneliness. So amazing, right? Loneliness, especially, I think, from what I've read this book a couple times, from what he talks about in other places, when a woman ends up not being married and not having children after 50, their loneliness factor goes through the roof because there's something missing. No husband, no kids, no grandkids, no immediate family. Now they have their cats and dogs, as some people say, which is true. And so then we can see here, that's the number one factor for women over 50 with summer ideations. There's a case, I think, to be, maybe here's proof on why it is important, why marriage and the bearing of children, assuming that you can. So again, I'm not saying that if you're barren or if the man is sterile or any problems, but maybe adoption if that's a problem. But when it's a choice, when it's something where maybe your career is more important, or you're just not that kind of woman, I think we can see here that it does cause problems. Number two, burden to family, future financial problems, and health. Okay, so let's see. I think we have some more here, right? Yes, I think. Okay, well, I don't think I have it on the screen, but I'm going to keep reading. Findings, this is from the book again. Findings such as these have now been reported by independent researchers in a study of 175 American university students. 175 American university students. Now we're talking about young people. Michael Brown and his colleagues tested DeCantanzaro's theory of summer. They found that individuals with low reproductive potential, back to sexuality and the fertility, basically, of people. It says that individuals with low reproductive potential, e.g., meaning who perceive that they are not attractive to members of the opposite sex. How about that? When a man or a woman perceive, and I'm sure it's as they age, right, that they are no longer attracted to another human being, to a member of the opposite sex, then the summer ideation increases. How about that? There's a case here for what? I don't know, fitness, weight loss. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's why the makeup industry, right, and the fitness industry are billion-dollar industries, because maybe we all innately know that to look older, it does something to your mind and to your brain, because you're no longer attractive to the opposite sex, and you know that, and it depresses you, and therefore these issues. And so who perceive that they're not attracted to members of the opposite sex, and high burdensomeness to kin reported more summer ideation, as well as more depression and hopelessness. Yeah. When you feel like you're a burden to society, to your family specifically, it says here, to your own kin, reported more summer ideation, as well as more depression and hopelessness. And let's not forget that it's not all about summer ideation. You have hopelessness and depression, kind of the prefactors, and the kind of the beginnings of a full-on summer ideation or full-on summer. And so you have some of these factors that are very important. And because I have aging parents and my wife as well, it's so important that we are near to our aging parents or grandparents, because, I mean, we know this, right? I mean, it's what we see everywhere, right? That elderly people feel hopeless and depressed and have summer ideations because of all these factors. So how important, right? The biblical principle of a family that stays together. And I think for us as Hispanics, Latinos, I'm thankful for our cultural heritage, that we take care of our parents and of our seniors and of our grandparents, abuelitos, abuelitas. And I think for us that are younger and even younger than me, how important it is that we don't lose some of these traditions and traditional values because of the American culture that seems to be less this way, right? The white American culture that seems to be less familial in terms of some of these traditions. And here we see how damaging that can be, and how important it is for us to take care of the elderly emotionally and as well as physically, and etc. Interestingly, it says here, the evolved summer adaptation hypothesis also helps to explain sex differences in the rate and the patterning of actual summers. Although men commit summer at higher rates than women at every age, the sex difference peaks at 2 points in life. During the years of the most intense mate competition, roughly ages 15 to 35. So that's the age when he calls it here, the mate competition is the highest. That's when men seem to go through with their summer ideation or their summer tragedy and event. 15 to 35, and in old age, 70 and later. How about that? So those are the years when the differences are at the peak in terms of life, and when you feel like at those ages that there's so much competition. Imagine that a young man at 18, let's say 50 to 35, a young man, this seems almost like impossible, that an 18-year-old young man, because he can't mate and he can't find a woman to be intimate with, and he knows who he is and he wants to procreate, and because of different changes or whatever it may be, women that have higher standards or men that maybe aren't, they don't know how to date, and especially these days, back to the pandemic and all this online stuff that I just really can't stand, even though I use it as a tool, but as a way of communicating and really being humans, it really is damaging in so many ways. And yet the addiction to TikTok and all of these reels and all this constant phone and online things, we see here that the isolation at 15 to 35, it creates less of a possibility of mating and sexual intimacy and sexual relationships for the young man, and therefore heightens his summer ideations. How about that? And at 70 plus. During the mid-20s, for example, men are more than 6 times as likely as women to commit summer. Can you believe that? In their mid-20s. Look at this. And what he's saying here, it's not because he's depressed because of work or money or even DNA or genetic makeup or a curse. We're talking about sex availability. We're talking about the importance of young men mating and having a woman that he can procreate with. I mean, it's that basic. And again, this is evolutionary science. And so it's very important, right? Very interesting that it's not about demons and I'm not saying that's not factors. So don't get me wrong. We're not talking about how there is no spiritual battle. Of course we know that. But again, from the biological perspective, evolutionary perspective, we're talking about a young man in his 20s. These are the statistics. 6 times more likely as women to commit summer because of the lack of sexual access. Amazing. And it says men after age 70, men are more than 7 times as likely as women to commit summer. Wow. Amazing, huh? And I think that's why it's so important to talk about these things. Because sometimes we think that sexual access and sex conversations is all bad. Like we shouldn't even talk about it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're horrible, especially for the man or the woman. Hoes and all this stuff, right? And I'm not saying we shouldn't have some sort of order and peace and follow God's word. Of course we need to, because that is the best way to have a family, procreate, and not end up here, right? All the things that God has established in his word are true and healthy for us, spiritually, physically, mentally, in every aspect. I mean, I am an example of that. My wife and I and our family and all of the commitment and there's no infidelity and one woman for 30 years, as I recently posted. All of these things have brought happiness to me as a man. I am in this age, in this, well, not 15 or 35. So I'm actually past, I guess, the danger zone. But when I was a young man in my 20s, I found the woman of my dreams, and we had a family, and we had that sexual access. She was one woman to me, committed to her. I was faithful to her. She was faithful to me. She did all the things in the house that I desired, and I provided for her, and we had this beautiful relationship. And she's, of course, an amazing woman, and I'm an amazing man. Well, we'll see, right? And my point is that those traditional roles, and as well as, of course, being a professional and pursuing God and serving God, all of these things are so important for the health of our own mental wellness, and sexual intimacy and access and the ability to reproduce and to have that capacity and have an actual woman in your bed, in your home, not to get too graphic here, is very important for a man, not just in terms of like, oh, yeah, you're just a typical man and you're just a pig, but we're talking about mental wellness. And the problem with a lack of access and a lack of sexual access, it actually increases a man's summer ideations. Let's continue here. So it says, so for the women, it says it's 7 times as likely after 70. For the men, it's 6 times. How about that? The evolved summer adaptation hypothesis explains this pattern. First, more men than women fail in heterosexual mating. Duh, right? More men than women fail in heterosexual mating. If you're a woman and you don't know this is so important for you to know. As a man, of course, I know this to be true. And as I said, I am blessed. I mean, but and I know guys that are in their 30s and they are divorced, single again, divorced again, married, whatever, right? And they don't have access. And if they're Christians, right, then even less of a possibility of having intimacy, because of course, God doesn't want that. And so we have these things that are rightly there and are good and healthy. My point isn't even like, hey, I want to just sleep around. My point is, a man in his 40s, let's just say, well, let's go back to what he says here. Let's say at 30, that isn't married, that is single or single again or whatever. Maybe he's been playing the field and now he's like, hey, I want to get married. And maybe he's unemployed. Maybe he's not that good looking. He's kind of overweight. He's broke. He lives with his mom, or he can't provide for his wife. He's kind of not a winning man. And therefore the sexual access is low. He's at home, porn, blah, 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 or whatever, right? Or OnlyFans, and, pleasing that aspect of what a man needs, but with fake things, with the digital space and not with an actual human. It says here that is a huge problem. And he says here, for men, more men than women fail. And so that's the point here is that more men than women fail at heterosexual mating. And these failures occur during the peak years of mate competition. Wow. How enlightening, right? Wow. I have to take a pause there just to think about the weight of this stuff for our young men. We're talking about young men, 15 to 35. We're not talking about some old, dirty old man. We're talking about young men who are trying to do the right thing, live their lives, but because of, like I said, these factors that women are looking for, right? Stability, money, success, kindness, love, and of course, money, a job, and health, and wellness, and fitness. They're not finding any partners. And so therefore, boom, at the peak years, when the mating, what is it called here? Competition is the highest, therefore, equivalently, or because of, that's when the highest summer ideation tends to happen for men. Second, men are more likely than women to suffer from infectious diseases, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, especially in the later years of life, making them more likely than women to become a burden to their families, which again, I think it was the second highest reason for summer ideation for men. In summary, results from independent investigators provide preliminary support for De Constanzo's evolutionary theory of summer. Last paragraph here. Other evolutionary psychologists, such as Godsad, argue that summer is a maladaptive response to sex-linked defeats in evolutionary relevant domains. Man, I had no idea really that sexual intimacy and access had such a high or such a huge part, or it has such a huge part. It played such a huge part in summer ideation and summer events. Really, I had no idea. I guess selfishly, because it just hasn't been my experience. Been married to a woman faithfully for 30 years, 27, and dating for 2 years. So 29, almost 30 years of being with one woman, monogamous to one woman, as I have stated. And with that access, as far as just talking about sexual access and sexual intimacy, and for the man, if I can now speak about more of the faithfulness, to have a woman who's faithful, and of course me to her, right? It goes both ways. That increases my joy and all the endorphins that are released. And again, not to get too graphic, but the joy of a man goes through the roof when he has access and compliance and joy and safety and security and love and all these things. And it goes both ways, but just talking about men here for a second. And yet when you don't have that, there is a problemos there, señores y señoras. Let's continue here. It says, SAD highlights the key finding that men are far more likely than women to commit summer following the loss of occupational status. Of course, we all know that, right? So lack of sexual access, which often, in terms of what women are looking for, correlates with a man who has no job, right? Who's going to want to date or be with a man who has no job? And again, women, unless it's a hoe kind of thing, they're not going to sleep around just with whoever, right? They're going to try to land a man and be wifed, as they say, right, with a man or to a man or by a man who has financial stability, mental stability, emotional, physical stability, health, wellness, spiritual stability, so that that man can hitch her wagon to a man who will protect her babies and provide for her children, diapers and food and shelter and stability and love and guidance and all the rest. So that's why when there are defeats, like he says here, then that's a big problem. Sex-linked defeats in evolutionary relevant domains. SAD highlights the key finding that men are far more likely than women to commit summer following the loss of occupational status. So that was my point, right? And then romantic breakup, rather than loss of a job or status, in contrast, triggers summer in some women. Wow. Now the women can say, yep, because I definitely, obviously I'm not a woman, so I don't know what matters the most. So look at this. It's not just the lack of access, but romantic breakup. So back to what the woman normally is longing for, right? Safety, security, intimacy, oneness, fidelity, faithfulness, kindness, love, provision, right? All these things that are so important. But what's a high factor here is romantic breakup rather than loss of a job or status. In contrast, triggers summer in some women. One argument in favor of the maladaptive byproduct hypothesis, maladaptive meaning that someone can adapt, is that no matter how dire someone's current circumstances are, the future often brings opportunities to better them. And that's what I always teach people. Man, it's so true, huh? There's nothing like hope. Hope is priceless. When you can help someone, and you have to really convince and really pray and really be very discerning. When someone is in this place of no sexual intimacy, no prospects, heterosexual, no access to heterosexual connection, all these things we've talked about, romantic breakups for women, for men, what did we say? It was just his health is an issue, and then sex-linked defeats. What a term, right? For men, how many, take an L, right? Taking an L for men is highly triggering. That's what it says here, right? And for women, romantic L's, romantic breakups. And so the importance of having hope and providing hope for people by obviously spiritual, but I think at some point it also has to turn to saying, you know what, this girl likes you. I mean, should that be a part of therapy perhaps? Hey, this girl told me that she thinks you're cute. Or, hey, I have this man who wants to offer you a job, right? I mean, if these are the factors that men that are foremost, that are in the foreground for men, that are foremost important for his mental health and his summer ideation, then maybe we need to bring that to the table as we counsel and help these people, men and women, right, to help him through some of these problems. So it says here, the future often brings opportunities to better them. Mates, meaning people that are together, can usually be replaced and jobs can usually be regained. See, this is a great argument right there. So that's my point is, so part of the hope that you want to bring to a man that is maybe struggling, it's not just this or that, or it's not just, oh, you're so happy, I love you. It's no, this woman loves you. And here, this someone that I just talked to, he wants to offer you a job, money and sex, as always, right? That's how we as men evaluate and rate our success, virility, desire for life, etc. It's so important, especially in that 15 to 35 and 70 plus. And then for women as well, it's very high as well, just a little bit different, but it's very similar. And then the last paragraph, finally, the summer adaptation and the maladaptive byproduct, I already read that hypothesis, each might be partially correct. The summer adaptation hypothesis seems most powerful in explaining summers when a person is a burden to kin. And that's probably like 70 plus, right? But maybe even before that. So second to sex and money is a burden to your family, right? So we've already kind of gone over that. The maladaptive byproduct hypothesis, in contrast, may provide a better explanation of sex differentiated triggers of summer in cases in which the taking of one's own life eliminates any prospect of future reproduction. Wow. I am speechless. I've read this a few times. But it is still very, very, very amazing stuff that we need to be taking heed of. And as I said, not to, of course, in any way say that prayer and all that isn't important, but we're talking about evolutionary psychology, the way that men and women actually think and are, regardless of, like I said, of color or race or even religion. And yet, as we know, Jesus gives us hope. And we know that in Christ we have hope. And yet Christian men, right, still take their own lives, Christian women. And so we have to be alert to the balance. I'm not saying it's just one or the other, but I think we have to be aware of all these things that are more scientific so that we can better be equipped, maybe even calm our own minds, maybe test these theories and say, is that true? Do I see that? Do I notice that? And then to be aware when it comes to, I think, young people to to allow them I don't even know how to quite phrase this, having a young man myself as a son, to allow them freedom in some ways, or to not quench that part of who they are as far as sexual access, right? And dating and women and girls and all these things. It's to not just have this young man be at home watching TV. And back to the problem of gaming and pornography and Zoom and the pandemic and being an introvert on top of all that, then you're even adding more problems to perhaps, as it says here, the peak problem of mating competition. When a man who isn't attractive, who doesn't have a job, who isn't very extroverted, who isn't confident and blah, blah, he's competing with all these men, high quality men who have all these traits and have all the girls. And so therefore he feels even less and less confident. And so you have to kind of balance all these things. How can you increase the confidence of a young man? How can you increase the confidence of a 20-something? If you are a 20-something, how can you increase your own confidence? Having a job, go to the gym, work out, get a haircut, brush your teeth, go outside, go get some sun, go to the beach, surf, work out, get a job. And then that woman may show up, go to church, have your life be right with God. And these are all things that are not very easy for a lot of people, especially young men. And but these are the things that matter, not only early in life, but at the end of life, as far as the topic of summer ideation. So, and the same thing goes for women. Really, as he says, it's not very different for women. The only thing that I saw as a difference was a whole romantic breakup versus a what did he call it again? A sex. I just love that phrase. It's like basically taking an L, right? That's what I call it. But what did he call it? Sex-linked defeats. That sounds even worse, right? But it certainly is. We know what it means, right? And then for women, it's romantic breakup. So we have to be aware. So maybe when a young girl goes through a breakup, we shouldn't just say, oh, you know what, don't worry about it. God's good and God's faithful. Yes, because that brings hope. But maybe we should discuss more, hey, who else in your life? Are there any other men who you can think of that are interested in you or that you're interested in them? Vice versa, right? Not just some guy that wants to sleep around, but an actual person, an actual prospect for a young lady who can maybe find that hope. And again, I'm not saying again that this is all just the only thing to consider, right? It's not like the only thing, but this is an important factor when advising a young woman, maybe your own daughter, your own friend, maybe yourself. You're in that age, in that range, 18 or I think it was 15 to 35. Maybe you're in that range and you find yourself not being, maybe having gone through a romantic breakup, right? And so maybe the reason why young women go to singles clubs or singles bars or singles churches, right, is because they know that if not, that hopelessness begins to set in, that depression, that loneliness. And so they don't want to be dealing with these summer ideation problems, right? And so maybe all these things are things we need to be encouraging and providing access and help and support to young people as they go through these mating, the high mating competition that happens for men, especially at that age. And I'm sure it is the same thing for women too, of course, right? If you're now 30 and not married, you see all these 21-year-olds that get all the guys. So you're beginning to think, where is my access, right? So you have to, and then you get more selective, right? The older you get, you don't want to just end up with anybody. And so you have this problem that we have to be aware of and encourage our young people, as well as people in their 70s, right? So it's not just a young man's problem or a young woman's problem. It is a problem that seems to be less after 35 to 70. And I'm a man now in my early 50s. So some of these things are there, mostly the work stuff and the money part and that kind of thing. But I would say that the other part, as far as sexual access, if you're a man who's married, in my case. But anyway, I think it seems to be less, and then it seems to get worse again after your 70s. So our grandparents or our parents' generation. Very important stuff to consider. Okay, well, thank you guys. Please share this, like this video, share it, get it out there to more and more people on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter. I think we're in all these places. We want to get this in front of more people. Let's get 10 likes on all these different videos. If you're the one and only, thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that like. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you share this out so that we can get YouTube and all these platforms to look at this video and say, hey, this is important. And these are important topics. Next time, maybe tomorrow, we will talk about the next chapter, which is chapter 4. which is going to be the best one. And I've gone through this. Women's long-term mating strategies. How about that? Women's mate preferences. Preferences for good financial prospects. How about that, huh? And then if there's some stuff for men here. Preference for somewhat older men. You will not be surprised what the statistics say about what older men want. Preference for height and athletic prowess. Preference for good health, symmetry, and masculinity. Very, very important stuff for us to talk about these days, especially in the fresh and fit Andrew Tate era that we're in. We need to be speaking the truth to young people from a biblical perspective with our eyes wide open so that we can have good conversations. And most of all, we can live lives of joy, lives of gozo. So share this out. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.